Olivia lived a stable and peaceful marriage. However, she didn't know it was all an illusion. Betrayed, judged, and underestimated by her husband and cousin, she had to start over, and an unexpected encounter changed her life. A man, a child, and a summer that would awaken hearts, challenge fears, and rewrite the rules of love forever. This is the story of a woman who was humiliated for being outside the norm, but proved her worth. Before we continue, I want you to know that your opinion is very important to us. So, if you're enjoying this, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. This simple and kind gesture will help us write new, exciting stories for you. It was a cold evening in downtown Seattle. The gray sky hung low, and the wind carried the smell of rain as Olivia walked along the damp sidewalks, her shoulders slightly hunched, her brown hair tied up in a messy bun. She had no idea that this gray afternoon would change the course of her life forever. That Friday, Olivia wore her usual white lab coat over a gray wool sweater, the standard outfit for her long days at the school where she taught biology. She had left work early. One of her students had gone home sick, and with her last class cancelled, Olivia decided to do something she hadn't done in a long time: surprise Joni, her husband, with a gift. Things between them hadn't been the same for months. He'd grown distant, cold. Even his good mornings sounded empty. And worse, she couldn't forget his words from a few days ago. "Do you ever look in the mirror, Olivia? You're huge. Are you just waiting to become obese before you do something about it?" Those words still burned. She had tried to explain that her weight gain was caused by hypothyroidism, but Joni had dismissed it with cruelty. "That's just an excuse for people who've given up," he said. Still, she wanted to believe there was hope. Maybe a small gesture could rekindle what was lost. So she bought him a navy blue tie with white stripes, just like the one he wore on their wedding day. With a faint smile, she left the store and walked toward his dental clinic, a modern two-story building with mirrored windows. The lights inside were dim. The electronic sign was off. Something felt strange. "Joni," she called softly as she stepped through the unlocked glass door. Silence. The reception area was empty. Only the faint echo of laughter drifted down from the upper floor. A woman's laughter, light and familiar. Olivia froze. Her pulse quickened. She climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last, following the sound until she reached a half-open door. Through the crack, she saw Joni, his lab coat unbuttoned, holding a young red-haired woman by the waist, kissing her passionately. The woman turned slightly, and Olivia's world shattered. It was Emily, her cousin. The same cousin she had taken in months ago when Emily moved to the city for college. The one she had trusted, loved like a sister. The gift slipped from Olivia's trembling hands, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Both turned instantly. Joni's face went pale. Time stopped. "How could you?" Olivia's voice broke. Joni stepped forward, stammering. "You weren't supposed to find out like this. We were going to tell you." Emily looked down, clutching the collar of her blouse. "We didn't want to hurt you, Liv. We've been trying to tell you for 6 months." "6 months," Olivia repeated, her voice hollow. Joni's tone turned cold. "Don't blame her. This isn't her fault. We drifted apart because you changed. You let yourself go. You don't take care of yourself anymore. You got lazy, and nothing fits you. Now." Each word cut deeper than the last. Her chest burned, but her whole body went numb. Without another word, Olivia turned and ran. Down the stairs, through the empty lobby, out into the freezing rain. When she got home, soaked and shaking, something inside her broke free. She stormed into their bedroom, flung open the closet, and began throwing every piece of Joni's clothing into garbage bags, suits, shoes, everything. Then she went to the guest room and did the same with Emily's belongings. Without saying a word, she dragged it all into the garage and slammed the door shut. For the first time in 15 years, Olivia let her rage speak louder than her pain. Saturday morning came, grey and silent. The house that had once been filled with laughter now felt like a tomb. Olivia sat on the couch, wrapped in a heavy blanket, eyes fixed on the television, though she didn't see anything. Her mind replayed the scene again and again. The kiss, Joni's shock, Emily's lipstick smeared across his face. 6 months. She whispered into the quiet, as if saying it out loud would help her believe it. She thought about all the signs she had ignored, the whispered conversations in the kitchen that stopped when she walked in, the long grocery runs that lasted hours, the sudden coldness in Joni's eyes. She remembered her friend Anna's warning months ago. Are you really going to let a young, single woman live under the same roof as you and your husband? Be careful, Olivia. But she hadn't listened. She'd only wanted to help. Now, sitting in that empty living room, the weight of betrayal crushed her. The man she loved, the cousin she trusted, both had destroyed her world. And yet, somewhere deep inside, beyond the tears and disbelief, a quiet voice whispered something she hadn't felt in years. Freedom, because when you lose everything, you finally discover what truly belongs to you. She asked for a week off and stayed home. That same morning, the phone rang. It was Joni's lawyer. His tone was cold, professional, distant. Mrs. Collins, Mr. Collins is initiating the divorce process. To speed things up, we'll send the property documents and settlement details by email. Olivia could barely breathe. Yes, she whispered, her voice barely audible. An hour later, the email arrived. She clicked it open, and her heart sank. Property located at 342 Oakwood Street, registered under the name of Irasima Collins, client's mother. Her eyes froze on that line. The house where she had lived for 15 years, the house she decorated with love, where she chose every curtain, every picture, every inch, wasn't hers. Neither was the car, nor the dental office she had helped renovate from scratch. Nothing belonged to her. It wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure, the dismantling of everything she had built. She felt like a fool for trusting blindly, for signing whatever he asked her to, for believing that love alone was enough. That afternoon, another message came, this time from Joni himself. You have 5 days to pack your things and leave the house. Just like that. 15 years, reduced to a deadline. On Tuesday, Olivia accepted her friend Anna's invitation to dinner. Anna, a colleague from the school, insisted she get out of the house. You need air, Liv. You need to see people, eat something good. Olivia hesitated but agreed. She put on a beige coat to hide the swelling in her arms, dark jeans and simple black flats. A touch of pink lipstick, her small act of courage. The restaurant was one she used to visit with Joni years ago, a cozy little bistro in downtown Seattle. The warm light, the smell of rosemary and butter. For the first time in days, she felt something close to calm. She smiled at Anna's stories about her students and took a sip of white wine. Everything was quiet until a familiar laugh sliced through the air. Olivia froze. She would recognize that laugh anywhere. Turning slowly, her eyes locked onto the source. Joni, sitting just 2 tables ahead, with Emily. Emily's red hair gleamed under the lights, her hand resting on Joni's. He wore the blue shirt Olivia had given him for his birthday. They looked so comfortable together, so intimate, as if their betrayal had never existed, as if Olivia was the forgotten ex-wife left behind. Joni saw her and smiled. Not a smile of shame or surprise, a smug, almost mocking smile, lifting his glass in a silent toast. Olivia's pulse pounded in her ears. Her hands trembled. The waiter came to take her order, but she couldn't speak. Do you want to leave? Anna whispered, squeezing her hand. Olivia took a deep breath. No, she said firmly. I'll finish my wine. She held Joni's gaze for a moment, not with hatred, but with a quiet, rising strength. Then turned back to Anna. Tomorrow I'm going to the courthouse. I'm signing the divorce papers. Anna blinked. "You're sure?" "Completely. I'm done living in this city, surrounded by ghosts." That night, Olivia opened her laptop. There it was again, the job posting she had read 3 times before. Seeking educational therapist experienced with children on the autism spectrum, housing included, location Santa Monica, CA. Her heart raced. She clicked apply. The next day, a call came from Mrs. Anna, the housekeeper of the family who owned the estate. Her voice was firm but kind. After a long online interview, Olivia received an email hours later. "Congratulations, you've been selected for an in-person interview in Santa Monica." For the first time in months, she smiled, genuinely. She went upstairs and pulled out the same suitcase she'd used on her honeymoon. Inside, she packed the essentials: clothes, her teaching certificates, college and master's diplomas, medical exams confirming her thyroid condition. She wasn't taking much, only what was truly hers. Then she faced the mirror. Her reflection looked tired. Pale skin, dark circles, weary eyes. But behind them, something new burned. A quiet, determined rage, a will to start over. For the first time in 15 years, Olivia didn't want to please anyone. She didn't want to deserve love. She wanted to rediscover herself. The next morning, the bus from Seattle rolled into Santa Monica under a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. When Olivia stepped out, the salty ocean breeze caught her hair and filled her lungs with something she hadn't felt in years: freedom. She wore a white blouse, beige linen pants, and carried a small leather bag. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from the possibility of a new beginning. She handed the taxi driver the address she'd received by email. He raised an eyebrow and said quietly, "That's a beautiful place to start over." And for the first time, Olivia allowed herself to believe him. The driver glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "Heading to Ocean View Hills. Only mansions out there." Olivia just nodded, her fingers tightening around her purse. As the car climbed the winding, tree-lined roads, she watched the houses grow larger, glass walls, tall gates, gardens that looked sculpted rather than grown. Finally, the car stopped before an elegant black iron gate. A discreet plaque read, "The Albuquerque Residence." Her throat tightened. This was it. The gate opened and an older woman greeted her with a warm smile. "Mrs. Anna, at your service," she said kindly. "Mr. Edward is finishing a meeting, but he'd like you to meet his son first. He's in the garden." Olivia followed her through a vast hallway of marble floors and high windows. The house smelled of lavender and polished wood, the kind of silence that came from years of discipline. Outside, the backyard stretched endlessly, a sea of green against the ocean breeze. There, under the shadow of a palm tree, sat Peter, a thin 7-year-old boy, brown hair neatly trimmed, lost in his own world. He was building something with small pieces of wood, his focus absolute. Olivia approached slowly, careful, not to disturb the rhythm of his small, precise hands. "Hi, Peter," she said softly. "I'm Olivia." No answer. He didn't even look up. He kept arranging the wooden sticks, one beside the other, forming a straight line, an invisible road only he could see. So she waited. Minutes passed before she quietly took a small wooden car from her bag, one she often used during therapy sessions, and placed it gently at the end of his road. Peter froze, looked at the car, then at her. Those eyes, big, brown and full of silence, met hers for a brief, fragile instant. He said nothing, but he didn't push the toy away either. Olivia felt a wave of warmth rise in her chest. It wasn't acceptance yet, but it was something, a beginning. They sat there together in stillness, the sound of the ocean and the whisper of wind weaving through the trees. Then, slowly, Peter moved the car forward, following the wooden line he had built. Olivia smiled. That single gesture meant everything. From the upper, Glass balcony, Edward Albuquerque watched, arms crossed, immaculate in a light blue shirt and grey slacks. He looked every bit the disciplined businessman. But in his eyes, the same shade of brown as his son's, something shifted. For years, Peter had refused any contact with strangers. Even Edward himself couldn't reach him. His silence felt like a wall too high to climb. But now, there was a crack in that wall. When Olivia stood and glanced toward the balcony, their eyes met. Neither smiled, neither looked away. Something unspoken passed between them. Later they met in his study. The room was filled with quiet strength. Dark wood, elegant furniture, a piano resting in the corner. "Mr. Albuquerque, it's a pleasure," Olivia said, extending her hand. "Edward, please," he replied, his voice deep, calm, almost distant. "No need for formalities here." He studied her for a moment. Mid-30s, light brown hair, green eyes that held both gentleness and pain. She was beautiful in an understated, human way. "Your resume is impressive," he said finally. "Specialist in inclusive education, certified in autism spectrum support. But I need more than credentials, Miss Olivia. I need someone who can reach my son." Olivia met his gaze, steady and calm. "I'm not here for a title, Mr. Albuquerque. Children like Peter need more than technique." She paused, her voice steady but tender. "They need patience, connection, truth." For the first time, Edward's composure faltered, barely, but enough for Anna to notice. She smiled quietly in the corner, having known him since he was a boy. She could see the storm behind his stillness. The way his fingers tapped against the armrest betrayed what words could not. When Olivia left the room, the silence she carried behind her lingered. Edward remained seated, staring into the empty space where she'd stood. There was something about her, not just professionalism. It was humanity, and that scared him more than he wanted to admit. Next morning, the fog still clung to the coastline when Olivia woke up. The room was bright, simple, overlooking the trees. Though the bed was soft and the linens scented with lavender, she hadn't truly slept. She got up, washed her face, and tried to steady the flutter in her chest. A new day, a new chance. As she headed downstairs, she stopped. Voices echoed faintly from below. Edward's voice, low, tense, controlled. "Listen, Susan, I can't have you here. Peter's been unstable lately. It's not the right time." Olivia froze mid-step. "Susan." The tone was unmistakably personal. She quietly retreated to the hallway, giving them privacy. In the kitchen, Anna was already preparing breakfast, the comforting scent of coffee filling the air. "Did you sleep well, dear?" the older woman asked. "More or less," Olivia admitted. "The house is very quiet." Anna gave a knowing smile. "Yes, too quiet sometimes." Olivia poured herself a cup of coffee, her mind still spinning. "Peter hasn't come. Down yet?" "Depends on the night," Anna replied. "Sometimes he only sleeps if Edward sings to him." Olivia blinked. She couldn't picture that man, cold, distant, singing, but the image softened something inside her. Moments later, Edward appeared at the doorway. Black t-shirt, dark jeans, jaw tense. He looked irritated, but when his eyes met hers, his expression eased. "Good morning," he said, voice low. "I hope you're comfortable." Olivia nodded politely, but her curiosity lingered. "Everything all right?" she asked, her tone gentle. He hesitated for just a second, and in that brief silence, the story between them quietly began. "Always is," Edward said, his tone low and firm. Before Olivia could respond, a small figure appeared in the hallway. Peter, still in his blue pajamas, clutching a white teddy bear against his chest. He paused at the door, eyes moving from her to his father, cautious, uncertain. Then he took a slow step forward. Olivia knelt down and extended her hand. Peter didn't take it, but he didn't retreat either. Instead, he inched closer, allowing her presence. Edward watched silently, arms crossed, but his gaze, it was sharp, heavy. The protective father, the man marked by loss. And in that silent exchange between the three of them, something fragile, something almost sacred, began to form. When Peter finally let Olivia guide him to the breakfast table, she knew. She had just stepped into their world. Over breakfast, Peter sat quietly, pushing food around his plate, while Edward tried to encourage him with patient words. Olivia stayed back, observing, learning the rhythm of that house, a house that was beautiful but lonely. Afterward, Edward left for work. He was a man constantly on the move, owner of a luxury hotel chain that kept him away most days. Outside, the morning sun painted the vast garden in soft gold. Peter walked barefoot on the grass, dragging a small red toy truck behind him. Olivia sat nearby on the stone, steps close enough to be present, far enough not to intrude. Every now and then, Peter looked back, just to check if she was still there. He didn't smile, but he didn't walk away either, and that was enough. From the veranda, Anna watched with misty eyes. "He doesn't need someone who just understands him," she'd said earlier that morning. "He needs someone who sees him." Olivia carried those words in her heart. She was determined to truly see this child, in all his silence, in all his colors. By late afternoon, Peter was sitting on the living room rug, playing with colorful blocks. When he looked up and smiled, just a little, Olivia froze. It was the first time. She sat beside him, wordless. He pushed a block toward her, and she quietly joined in. Piece by piece, they built a tower together, each block a fragile bridge between two distant worlds. "Wanna help me build a tall one?" she asked softly. Peter nodded, and just like that, laughter began to fill the room. At one point, he reached out and touched the necklace around her neck, a small blue stone on a thin chain. "It's pretty," he murmured. Olivia swallowed hard, her heart trembling. "Thank you, sweetheart," she whispered. When Edward entered the room, he stopped at the doorway. For a moment he couldn't move. There they were, his son and that woman, smiling together. No tension, no fear, just connection, something he hadn't seen in years. He watched quietly before walking closer. "Looks like you two are getting along," he said, his voice softer than usual. Olivia looked up, still kneeling on the rug. "We're building something together," she replied. Her words hung in the air longer than either of them expected. For the first time, Edward smiled. Not the polite smile of a businessman, but something real. The golden afternoon light softened his features, revealing a kindness buried beneath the armor. "Thank you," he said, almost in a whisper. She nodded, and in that brief silence, both of them felt it. A quiet understanding, delicate but undeniable. A week passed. Rain tapped gently against the windows one night as Olivia sat in bed reading, wrapped in a cotton robe. A faint knock broke the silence. She opened the door, and there was Peter, barefoot, clutching his teddy bear, eyes wide with fear. "I'm scared," he whispered. Olivia's heart tightened. She knelt beside him, brushing the hair from his forehead. "Come on," she said softly. "Let's go." They walked together down the hall. His room was small, cozy, rocket-shaped lamp, colorful drawings on the walls. Olivia sat on the edge of his bed as he crawled under the blanket. He didn't ask for a story or a song. He just reached for her hand. And that was enough. Minutes later, he was asleep, his breathing calm, peaceful. Olivia stayed a while longer watching him. That night, she understood. Peter had given her something priceless, his trust. When she stepped into the hallway, Edward was there, still in his work clothes, tired but alert. "He fell asleep?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she whispered. "He held my hand until he did." Edward nodded, visibly moved. For a moment they just stood there, facing each other in the dim light. "You have something," he said softly, a way of reaching him that no one else does. Olivia smiled faintly. I don't think it's me, she said. I think he's letting me in. Edward's smile deepened, rare but real. For a moment, the air between them changed, closing the distance. You're good for this house, Olivia, he said before he could stop himself. She lowered her gaze, cheeks warming. Thank you, Mr. Albuquerque. I just want to help. He watched her, not just her calmness, but the way light seemed to soften around her, the way she carried gentleness like strength. And right there in that quiet corridor, something unspoken began to bloom. Not just respect, something deeper, something neither of them dared name. The next morning was clear, the sky painted in shades of pale blue. The scent of coffee drifted through the house. In the garden, Olivia knelt beside Peter, helping him plant a sprig of rosemary in a small pot he had painted himself. His laughter mixed with the sound of birds, and Edward watched from a distance. The sight of them stirring something warm, something long forgotten. For the first time in years, the Albuquerque house didn't feel so heavy. It felt alive. Eduardo stood on the veranda, a glass of orange juice in his hand. Though what he was truly drinking in was the sight before him. It was something he'd never had, yet silently longed for. The way Olivia leaned down to listen to little Peter, her voice patient, her presence steady. It moved something deep inside him, something he didn't quite know how to name. He was about to step down and join them when the sound of tires on gravel broke the moment. A sleek silver car stopped by the gate. Unexpected. He frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone. The gate opened, and Susan stepped out. Hair tied in a perfect ponytail, dark jeans, a satin beige blouse, and that poised smile that always hid more than it revealed. Susan? Eduardo's tone carried surprise. You didn't say you were coming. I thought I'd surprise you, she replied sweetly, stretching up to kiss him. He let her, though his body stayed rigid. Peter's in the garden, he said after a pause, with the new tutor. Oh, right. Olivia, isn't it? Susan's eyes gleamed. I'd love to meet her. They walked together to the garden. Olivia and Peter were laughing over something only they understood. When they noticed the visitors, Olivia stood up, brushing soil from her jeans. Olivia, this is Susan, Eduardo said, his tone formal. My girlfriend. Susan extended her hand, smiling like a woman playing a part she didn't believe in. Pleasure to meet you. I've heard wonderful things about you. The pleasure's mine, Olivia replied warmly. Peter, shy, clung to his father's leg. When Susan reached to touch his hair, he pulled away. He's just shy, Olivia said softly. Susan nodded, but her attention was elsewhere, not on the boy, but on Eduardo, and the way he looked at Olivia. It wasn't just respect. It was tenderness, quiet admiration, a warmth that cracked the distance between them. The visit that followed was painfully uncomfortable. Susan talked endlessly about her trip, her new clothes, the events she wanted them to attend together. Eduardo smiled out of politeness, but every time Olivia spoke, his eyes found her. And Susan noticed. Oh, she noticed, and it burned. When they finally went inside, Susan's arm looped tighter around Eduardo's. Who's helping with my luggage? She asked, her tone just a little too sweet. In his office, Eduardo's voice hardened. I told you not to come. Peter's still adjusting to his tutor. Susan laughed lightly, trying to mask the tension. What? You want me to leave now? He sighed. You can stay, but I'll book you a suite at my hotel. Her smile faded. Of course, she murmured. Truth be told, she preferred it that way. At least she wouldn't have to pretend to like the boy who never smiled at her. That night, after tucking Peter into bed, Eduardo lingered by the door. Olivia was on the floor, arranging toys with quiet care, as if she had always belonged there. What am I doing? He whispered to himself, but deep down he already knew. He was allowing himself to feel again. The next morning, the house echoed with a sound he'd long stopped hoping to hear. Peter's voice. The boy pointed to paper letters on the wall. "Pa, Pa," Olivia clapped softly, tears glimmering in her eyes. "That's right, sweetheart. You did it." Eduardo stood at the doorway, frozen, watching. His son was reading. For the first time, he saw not a child trapped in silence, but one finding his way out. "How did you do this?" he asked later, as they walked through the garden bathed in golden light. Olivia smiled, brushing paint from her fingers. He just needed someone to truly see him. Eduardo's gaze lingered, not just grateful but changed. "You have no idea what you've done for him," he said softly. She looked away, cheeks warming. "It's not me," she whispered. "It's him. He's the one letting me in." Eduardo smiled, a real one this time, the kind that reached his eyes. That evening, the doorbell rang again. Susan walked in, arms full of shopping bags, perfume thick in the air. She froze at the sight of Olivia and Peter laughing together on the couch. Eduardo entered moments later, greeting her without enthusiasm. Susan saw the way he looked at Olivia, a gaze she had never earned. Her heart twisted with jealousy and fear. She knew right then that Olivia wasn't just the tutor anymore. She was becoming something more, the heartbeat of that home. That night, Susan lay awake at the hotel, staring at the ceiling, and in that silence, she made herself a promise. She wouldn't let that woman, the one with kind eyes and quiet strength, take what she believed was hers. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows. The breakfast table was set beautifully, with linen cloths, fresh flowers, fruit, and small slices of cake for Peter. He refused to start eating until Olivia sat beside him. She corrected his words with infinite patience. Eduardo watched them, a faint smile softening his features. And from the corner of the room, Susan stood, silent, observant, realizing, perhaps for the first time, that love doesn't shout or demand. Sometimes it simply arrives and quietly changes everything. The morning light poured through the kitchen windows, painting everything in gold. Eduardo poured Olivia a cup of coffee, his movements calm, precise, until Susan's voice sliced the air. "Wow, Olivia, that's a lot of bread for breakfast. If I were you, I'd have cut gluten a long time ago." The words floated like poison in the air. Olivia smiled gently, refusing to react, but Eduardo's cup hit the saucer with a sharp click. Across the room, Anna, the housekeeper, froze, watching silently as tension thickened in the air. Moments later, Olivia stood, grace in every gesture. "Pedro, let's continue your reading in the library?" she asked softly. The boy followed her without a second thought. When they were gone, Eduardo turned to Susan. "Susan, please," he said, voice firm. "That wasn't necessary." "It was just a joke," she muttered, rolling her eyes. "Then it wasn't a funny one," he replied. Susan crossed her arms. "You're defending her now? That woman's been here a month and already she's your priority?" Eduardo's gaze hardened. "That woman has done more for my son in 4 weeks than you've done in 2 years. If you can't see that, the problem isn't her, it's you." The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. Susan swallowed her anger. For the first time, she realized she was losing control. That night, the air in the house was thick with unspoken words. Olivia remained kind and calm, serving dinner. To little Pedro, as if nothing had happened. Anna's eyes followed her with quiet admiration. She could see the strength behind the woman's silence. When the meal ended, Eduardo turned to Susan. "I think it's best if you stay at a hotel for now," he said evenly. Susan's jaw dropped. "You're kicking me out because of that woman?" "I'm asking you to leave," he corrected, "because this is my son's home, and he deserves peace." She left, furious, and only Anna heard her whisper, "This isn't over." That night, the house finally rested. The only sound was Olivia's soft voice reading a bedtime story to Pedro. A story about a king who had everything but never learned how to listen. Eduardo stood at the door watching them. Something in his expression had changed. When Pedro finally fell asleep, he said quietly, "You've done more for him than you know." Olivia smiled. He just needed someone to believe in him. Their eyes met, and for a brief, suspended moment, the air seemed to hum between them, something unnamed, something real. Saturday morning brought a golden sunrise over Santa Barbara. "Let's take a walk on the beach," Eduardo suggested. Pedro cheered, and Olivia hesitated for a heartbeat before nodding with a smile. The three of them walked barefoot in the sand. Pedro ran toward the waves, laughing, while Eduardo and Olivia walked side by side, their silence warm, easy. "The ocean has a way of quieting everything," Olivia said. Eduardo looked at her, then at his son. "You've brought peace into this house," he said softly. Then, after a pause, "Has anyone brought peace to you, Olivia?" She looked away. "Not anymore. My marriage ended years ago. Betrayal, humiliation. He left me for my cousin." Eduardo's heart tightened. "He was a fool," he said, his voice deep and sure. "You're a complete woman, strong and beautiful." Olivia lowered her gaze, the wind catching her hair. Eduardo reached out, touching her shoulder gently. "If he couldn't see your worth, then he never deserved you." For a moment, time stood still. The sea, the wind, the world itself seemed to pause. Pedro's voice broke the silence, calling them to see his sandcastle. Olivia smiled, walking toward him, but something inside her had changed. And Eduardo, watching her go, knew that something inside him had changed too. Sunday came bright and warm. Olivia was getting Pedro ready for another day at the beach when Susan appeared, uninvited, in designer sunglasses and high heels. "Surprise! I came to spend the day with you," she announced. Pedro ran to show her his drawing, but she barely looked. "Later, honey, I've got a headache." Olivia hid her discomfort, but Eduardo saw it instantly. "We're heading to the beach," he said, trying to stay light. Susan rolled her eyes. "The beach, with all that sand and heat? Not a chance. And who's watching the kid? Her?" Olivia tried to calm the storm. "It's fine, Susan. I'm off today, but if you need me, I'll be around." Susan laughed coldly. "Careful, Olivia. You're getting a little too comfortable. Don't forget, he's my man." Pedro's eyes filled with tears he didn't understand. Eduardo clenched his fists, but before he spoke, Olivia crouched down and smiled at the boy. "Come on, Pedro," she said softly. "Let's go build another castle. Sometimes, when people don't understand love, they confuse it with fear." And as they walked toward the door, Eduardo's eyes followed her, realizing perhaps for the first time that real love wasn't loud or dramatic, it was quiet, brave, and it had just entered his life. "Susan, we need to talk. Now." Eduardo's voice cut through the tension in the room. She rolled her eyes but followed him, her heels clicking sharply across the floor. Inside the library, he shut the door firmly. "You treated my son with disrespect," he said coldly. "He's not a burden. He's a child. My child." Susan crossed her arms. "And I'm your girlfriend. I'm tired of coming second to that spoiled kid and his saintly teacher." Eduardo's tone hardened. "Watch your words. Olivia has done more for us than you ever tried to do." "Oh, please," she sneered. "The chubby savior of the family? What's next? You falling in love with her?" "I don't know what I'm feeling," he admitted, his patience gone. "But I know this. We're over." For a moment, she froze. Then, grabbing her purse, hissed, "You'll regret this." "No," he replied calmly. "I'd only regret staying." She stormed out, and silence fell. Again. In the living room, Pedro was clutching his teddy bear. Eduardo knelt beside him. "It's okay, son," he whispered. "Let's go to the beach." Pedro reached for his father's hand and then for Olivia's. "Will you come with us, Miss Olivia?" Their eyes met. No words were needed. The afternoon sun glowed softly over the California coast. Pedro ran across the sand, chasing shells with a bucket, while Olivia adjusted his cap. Eduardo watched them, a small, peaceful smile spreading across his face, the first in months. He had been preparing to end things with Susan for a long time. The laughter, the tenderness, all of it had faded. What was left was vanity and tension. But standing there, watching Olivia, something in him felt reborn. She sat on the towel under a striped umbrella, dressed in a light white sundress, her hair tied up, skin glistening in the sunlight. Eduardo approached with 2 coconuts in hand. "For you," he said with a gentle smile, "a small thank you for being a light in Pedro's life." Olivia smiled softly. "He gave me hope again, Eduardo." They drank quietly, exchanging glances that said more than words. Pedro was building a sandcastle nearby, laughing as the waves chased his feet. Eduardo sat closer. The silence between them was warm, full of something unspoken. "I'm opening a new hotel in 2 weeks," he said. "There'll be an event. Friends, investors. I want you to come." "As a guest?" she asked, hesitant. He smiled. "As my guest." Before she could respond, Pedro shouted from the shore, "Dad, Olivia, come see my castle!" They walked together side by side, their fingers brushed, a fleeting touch but charged with meaning, the kind of moment that feels like a spark in slow motion. The day faded into laughter, stories, and stolen glances that hinted at something deeper than either dared to name. 2 weeks later, the grand opening of Eduardo's new hotel in Santa Monica was a masterpiece of elegance, golden lights, marble floors, and a live orchestra filling the air. Eduardo looked impeccable in a tailored grey suit, greeting guests with grace, but his eyes kept drifting toward the door, waiting. When the clock struck 8, she arrived. Olivia stepped into the room, and time seemed to slow. A red gown hugged her curves, elegant and bold. Her hair swept into a loose bun that framed her face perfectly. The soft lighting made her eyes shimmer like emeralds. Conversations around the room quieted. Eduardo couldn't move. He had only seen her in modest dresses and gentle smiles, but tonight she was breathtaking. When their eyes met, she smiled. And in that moment, he saw everything he'd been denying. Admiration, tenderness, desire. He walked toward her. "You look absolutely stunning." "Thank you," she said, her voice steady, though her hands trembled slightly. Inside, old memories whispered, her ex-husband's cruel words still echoing, "You'll never be enough." But tonight, standing in that room, she was. Across the hall, Susan, who had been staying at the hotel, watched from a distance, gripping her champagne glass too tightly. Her golden dress sparkled under the lights, but beside Olivia, she looked almost invisible. "Well, if it isn't Miss Perfect," Susan said, forcing a smile. "Didn't expect to see you here. That dress is bold. Takes courage to wear red when you're so comfortable," Olivia finished calmly. "Yes, it does." Eduardo stepped in, his voice firm but even. "Susan, enough. There's no need for your cruelty tonight." Olivia exhaled quietly. Eduardo touched her arm, turning to her with a smile. "Let's make a toast to new beginnings." They stepped out onto the pool deck. The ocean stretched endlessly before them, reflecting the city lights. They raised their glasses, the air between them shimmering with unspoken promises. Inside, the party reached its peak. Violins swelled, chandeliers sparkled. But nothing in that room shone brighter than the woman in red. Eduardo couldn't take his eyes off her, and for the first time in years, he didn't hide what he felt. He walked to her again, offering a glass of white wine. "I still can't decide what's more breathtaking tonight, the view of the ocean or the woman standing before it." Olivia laughed softly, her cheeks flushed. "The ocean wins, I think." Eduardo shook his head. his gaze unwavering. "You're beautiful exactly as you are, Olivia. I hope you know that." Before she could reply, the sound of Susan's heels echoed across the marble floor, sharp, furious, like a storm on the horizon. "Wow, this wine is really strong, huh?" said Susan, stepping closer with a teasing smile. But as she raised her glass for a toast, her hand slipped. The deep red wine splashed directly across Olivia's elegant dress. "Oh no, I'm so clumsy," she murmured, feigning guilt. But it wasn't the wine that stung Olivia. It was the quiet triumph behind Susan's smirk. Before she could react, Eduardo stepped in, grabbing a napkin from the table. "That was unnecessary, Susan," he said sharply. Then, turning to Olivia, his voice softened. "Come with me." He led her gently away from the crowd. In the corner of the grand ballroom, he took a damp cloth from a waiter and handed it to her. "She did that on purpose. I'm sorry." "It's not your fault," Olivia said quietly, dabbing at the stain. "But I think I should go." "Don't," Eduardo whispered, stopping her. Stay with me." Their eyes met. There was honesty in his, and something more, something unspoken. "Let me show you the terrace," he offered softly. "It's the most beautiful place in the hotel, and one of the few where we can actually breathe." She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. They climbed the marble stairs together, Olivia with her stained but striking dress, Eduardo with his heart racing as if carrying a confession he'd kept buried for too long. Under the silver glow of the city lights, he finally spoke. "You know," he murmured, looking at her, "I've always wondered how someone can go through so much and still smile like that." Olivia turned slowly toward him. "And I've always wondered," she replied softly, "how someone can hide so much sadness behind success." Eduardo exhaled, his voice low and raw. "The truth is, I got used to living on autopilot. I did everything by the book, work, achievements, relationships. But now, after you, everything feels different. It's like something finally makes sense." A charged silence followed, not empty, but alive, full of unspoken truths. A soft breeze brushed her hair, and he gently reached to tuck a loose strand behind her ear. "You deserve someone who truly sees you, Olivia," he whispered. "And I see you." Her breath caught. The words hit deep into a part of her that had been silent for years. "I'm not used to this," she confessed, voice trembling. "To someone looking at me like that." "Then let me show you," he said, stepping closer. "My way, in your time." And then it happened. At first, just closeness, a heartbeat apart. Their breaths mingled. The world seemed to pause. Eduardo's hand traced her jawline, and his lips brushed hers, featherlight, almost asking permission. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, eyes closed, surrendering to the moment. The kiss deepened, slow and tender at first, then urgent, alive. His hand slid to the back of her neck. Her palms rested against his chest, feeling the rapid rhythm of his heart. One that had just remembered what it meant to feel. The city faded away. The music below became distant, like an echo from another life. When they finally parted, both were breathless, eyes still closed, as if waking from a dream too beautiful to end. "That was," Olivia began, but the words vanished. "Real," Eduardo finished for her, a soft smile touching his lips. "And I don't want it to end." Down below, hidden behind a velvet curtain, Susan watched with narrowed eyes, her glass trembling until it cracked in her hand. The next morning, the hotel still carried the scent of roses and echoes of last night's music. Eduardo walked through the quiet halls with a lightness he hadn't felt in years. The image of Olivia, the red dress, the kiss under the city lights, lingered vividly in his mind, but peace never lasts long. In the executive lounge where the top investors gathered for breakfast, Joni, one of the youngest and most arrogant partners, approached with a smug grin. Impressive. Party last night, Eduardo, he said smoothly. Very lively. He leaned closer, lowering his voice, especially that part on the terrace. And just like that, Eduardo knew the night that changed everything wouldn't stay secret for long. The ballroom glowed with golden lights, laughter and envy hidden behind champagne glasses, and then a careless toast. Wow, this wine is really strong, huh? Susan's voice dripped with false charm as her hand slipped. A splash of red wine hit Olivia's elegant gown like a cruel strike of fate. "Oh no, I'm so clumsy," she murmured, feigning regret, but the smirk at the corner of her lips told the truth. Before Olivia could react, Eduardo stepped in, calm but firm. "That was unnecessary, Susan." Then to Olivia, gentler now, "Come with me." He led her away from the noise into a quiet corner bathed in soft light. He handed her a cloth, his eyes filled with sincerity. "She did that on purpose. I'm sorry." "It's not your fault," Olivia whispered, "but maybe I should leave." "Don't," he said, his voice low, almost pleading. "Stay, please, stay with me." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. "Let me show you the terrace," he offered. "It's the only place here that still feels real." They climbed the marble stairs together, her dress stained but her presence radiant, his heart beating faster with every step. Under the shimmering skyline, Eduardo finally spoke. "You know, I've always wondered how someone can go through so much and still smile like that." Olivia turned, her voice soft but steady. "And I've always wondered how someone can hide so much sadness behind success." He exhaled, the confession heavy but freeing. "I got used to living on autopilot, work, perfection, expectations. But after meeting you, everything feels different, like life finally makes sense." The wind brushed her hair, and he reached out, gently tucking a loose strand behind her ear. "You deserve someone who truly sees you, Olivia," he whispered. "And I do. I see you." Her heart trembled. The words pierced the silence inside her. "I'm not used to this," she breathed. "Someone looking at me like that." "Then let me show you," he murmured. "At your pace, in your time." And then the world stopped. Their faces drew close, breath mingling. His hand traced her jawline, his lips brushed hers with fragile hesitation. She didn't pull away, she surrendered. The kiss was soft at first, then deep, desperate, alive. His hand rested behind her neck, hers pressed against his chest, feeling the wild rhythm of his heartbeat, a rhythm that had long been forgotten. The city, the lights, the music below, all faded. There was only them. When they finally parted, breathless and trembling, "That was," she whispered. "Real," he said, smiling faintly. "And I don't want it to end." But behind a curtain, Susan watched, jealousy burning in her eyes, her wineglass cracking in her hand. The next morning, the hotel was quiet, filled only with the faint scent of roses and the memory of what had happened under the stars. Eduardo walked through the halls lighter than ever, the image of Olivia still vivid in his mind. But peace never lasts long. In the executive lounge, Joni, the youngest and most arrogant partner, approached with a smug grin. "Impressive party last night, Eduardo. Very eventful." He leaned closer, voice low and poisonous. "Especially the part on the terrace." And at that moment, Eduardo knew the night that changed everything would no longer belong to them alone. He traced her body with reverence, slow and deliberate, as if discovering something sacred. Whispered praises accompanied gentle kisses along her neck, shoulders, and the curves that had captivated him from the start. Olivia closed her eyes, letting each touch soothe old wounds. It was a night of surrender, of souls reconnecting, not just bodies. By morning, she slept nestled against Eduardo's chest. His hand rested naturally on her waist, a quiet smile on his lips. Sunday arrived lazy and golden, the soft blue sky spilling through the curtains. Olivia opened her eyes slowly, feeling the warmth of him beside her. For the first time in years, peace filled her. Eduardo bent down, brushing a kiss to her forehead. "Good morning, my beautiful woman." She smiled, shy but happy. "It still feels like a dream." "Then let's make this dream last," he said, softly but with certainty. They shared a simple breakfast, their glances full of complicity. Then Pedro's excited voice echoed through the house as he returned from Anna's home, carrying seashells. "Aunt Olivia, look what I found." Olivia knelt to hug him, receiving the shells as treasures. Eduardo placed a hand on his son's shoulder. His gaze was calm, confident, the gaze of a man who knew what he wanted. "Pedro," he said, kneeling too, "we have something important to tell you. Olivia will keep being your teacher, but she's also going to be my girlfriend. We're going to be a real team, and you're a very important part of that." Pedro's eyes shone. "I like that. We're a team now, right?" Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. She hugged Pedro tightly as Eduardo wrapped both of them in his arms. In that moment, an invisible yet profound bond formed. A new family. From the hallway, Anna watched, hands over her heart, eyes glistening. She stepped forward and embraced Olivia tightly. "My daughter, you've brought joy back to this house. God bless you three." In the days that followed, life found a gentle rhythm. Breakfasts were shared with laughter, study sessions with Pedro came with secret smiles, and family dinners became rituals of love and warmth. Olivia and Eduardo walked hand in hand through the city, no longer hiding their feelings. Whispers followed them, some judging, others smiling. But what they had was real. For the first time in a long time, Olivia felt whole. Months passed. The house, once silent, now echoed with voices and laughter. Eduardo's company thrived, as did his beachfront hotel, where Olivia coordinated cultural and educational events, finally feeling valued. The respect and love between them grew with every shared conversation, gentle touch, and genuine partnership. Pedro flourished too, reading small stories aloud before bed, always asking Olivia to stay by his side because, as he said, her voice made the tales sweeter than candy. The city no longer whispered with judgment. Their love became a quiet inspiration, proof that even those out of the mold could find happiness. One golden summer afternoon, the ocean sparkling behind them, Olivia walked barefoot along the sand, Pedro on one side, Eduardo on the other. Her blue dress flowed like foam, her laughter bright and fearless. "You know what I think," Pedro said, swinging Olivia's hand. "You should get married already." Olivia's eyes widened. She glanced at Eduardo, who chuckled softly. "You know, Pedro, I was thinking the same thing," he said, gazing tenderly at Olivia, "but I'll do it right, with a ring and the perfect words." Tears streamed down her face, tears of joy, surprise and love. That evening, between the waves and whispered promises, Olivia knew she had won. She had conquered the pain of betrayal, the cruel whispers, the fear of starting over. Love now lived in the sand, in Pedro's laughter, in Eduardo's touch, and most importantly, in her own brave, whole, beloved heart. Thanks for sticking around. If you enjoyed this story, like the video, comment on what you thought and where you're talking about it, subscribe to the channel and share it with a friend who would like to learn more about it.